What are some tips about fighting you could give someone who's never been in a fight? Elbows in. Hands eyebrow level. Chin down. Throw mostly straight punches to the nose. Hooks and uppercuts to the chin. And don't expect to win a fight just cause you read some tips on Reddit. That last one is the most important tip I've read yet. If in closer combat, and you aren't mentally prepared to fight dirty, as in gouging eyes, ripping ears, biting, etc., use elbows. Elbows, with the right velocity, swept across your body like a blade, can be absolutely devastating for close combat. More effective if you have your other hand on the other side of their head. Edit. To clarify what I meant by nasty by not using nasty and replacing with what I meant. Always keep your guard up. This is one thing you see a lot of beginners do. Throw a punch and then drop the guard. Don't expect that you can evade like some of the pros do by dropping their guard to provoke their opponent into a mistake. This takes years of trained reaction and still fails them too. Also, street fights can be quite scary even if you're trained. There are no rules. There is no ref. There is most likely no one stopping your opponent from going too far or using dirty tricks. That's no joke and a horrible situation to be stuck in. First rule is always, avoid the fight if possible. If your opponent pulls a knife, distract. Throw STH for example, and run. Don't try to disarm your opponent like in some of those idiotic YT videos. This works in those showcases. Usually doesn't work in a real fight. A hand with a knife is a lot faster and flexible than you'd probably think. You'll end up heavily injured or dead. And actually I'll give you even better advice. Just don't fight anyone. You might smack someone only to find out they're packing a 9mm. Or, you could kill someone with one punch and go to jail for a long time. For self-defense, if you really can't avoid a fight, there are really only two likely scenarios. Yes, all this. I did martial arts for a few years. When it came time to actually throw, it's still not a normal course of action. And make sure your thumb is down and out of the way. Hands at eyebrow level is way too damn high. Elbows in and hands at eyebrows should be how you guard and not your default stance. Dominant hand by chin, jaw level, non-dominant a few inches lower and a few out. Better to hook the whole side of the jaw instead of just aiming for the chin as well. Everyone has a game plan until they get hit in the nose. I boxed for a little while when I was 16. It's amazing how quickly things change once you get a really good shot to the nose, lol. When you form a fist, don't put your thumb around your fingers. You'll break your thumb if you do that. To piggyback, don't act like a bitch and don't retaliate if you lose. You'll only look more weak, and probably end up getting hurt. Getting punched hurts. Sounds like it's not much of a tip, but a lot of people walk into fights thinking they'll throw a swing back and power through it like Iron Man. This is most definitely not the case if you've never been in a fight. Edit for all the big bois commenting here. Op asked about the first time in a fight. Your balls of steel aren't going to help anyone reading this post for advice. Great that you felt pain after you lost the fight. But my point is that it's not a pleasant experience and you can't expect it to play out like the movies. Adrenaline will not kick in for most people's first fight and getting hit will hurt. Especially in the nose. And make sure to move away from a punch. You don't need to dodge a punch. You just need to make sure you're dampening the impact as much as possible. Notice in combat sports that they never move into a strike. Also, punching people hurts too. Expect to break a knuckle or two. From my very limited experience getting punched, I find it more disorienting than painful. Possibly because the person punching me was never a pro. Like, momentary vision blur, loss of balance, teary eyes. I never really noticed the pain till later when I had a bag of frozen peas on my eye. Any tips for shaking off the perceptual disorientation of being punched quicker? Or anticipating the punch in a way that reduces its disorienting effects? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, and also, you don't rise to the occasion. you fall to your level of training. Not only does it hurt, it stuns. Getting punched in the face can kill your train of motion and thought process, literally stunning you in place. I frequented a lot of shady bars and clubs in my travels, and most fights are like 2 punches and broken up. Others are a blow to the head or 2. People who have never fought but feel they would fare well because of what they read on the internet are in for a rude awakening. There's a ton of people out there that have nothing to lose, even less empathy, but I feel there's a lot to prove. They have been in fights before and will again. If they antagonize you, simply remove yourself from the situation. I don't agree and have been in a few fights both in and out of the ring. I'd say when you've got adrenaline pumping you don't feel much of the pain from the punches, but do feel the impact. So the punch might cause you to blank momentarily or rock you a little, but actual pain not so much. Punching someone you might fuck your hand up without a glove on though. I got hit while sparring and was wearing protective headgear. I was still stunned by how it felt. Getting punched in the head is a fucking trip. I was really not prepared for just how disorienting it would be. Go all in. If you're not committed to do the most damage, there's a good chance you'll get your ass whipped. And mentally prepare yourself to go all in. If you're too squeamish to do a given thing when given a chance, admit that to yourself and find something else you would be okay with doing to another human being who is trying to hurt you. I dunno, man. If I go all in, I can kill someone. He may fall wrong and crack his head and die. This actually scares me more than being beaten up. But importantly, go in calm. Going in hot will lead to you taking a wrong punch and then get knocked out. You have to remember defense is just as important, and when you punch you partly leaving yourself open to one, so make sure you smart about it. Source: iBox. Here, self-defense isn't really taken well if you damage the attacker too much. There have been several cases where the victim has to pay for the damages caused, regardless of who began the fight. The laws can be really stupid here sometimes. I live in Finland. If you don't need to fight, run. De-escalate and/or run. Your pride isn't worth a brain injury, and anyone who tells you it is probably already has one. And if you can't run, take them out by any means necessary. No such thing as a fair fight when your health and safety are on the line. This, more often than not, you can't be sure of everything that you need to know. Does the dude carry a knife? A gun? Did the dude train or lift? Whose side are the people around you on? Will they finish the fight if their guy doesn't win? Is the guy connected? Will his cousin hunt you down later? This one actually happened to a friend of mine. Sport fighting is fun, but real fighting ruins lives. This, every time. You never know when things might go sideways. Better to be safe and alive than the winner of the fight going to jail or the loser who is dead. Case in point. Dated a guy who got into a bar fight. He definitely won, but the guy who lost ended up with a traumatic brain injury because when my ex kicked him over, he hit his head on a concrete parking lot divider. There's a saying in Gujarati, Bhagayi Beto, one who runs is a man. Nigerundayo. Nigerundayo. Easier said than done. My fight or flight response is more stand still and hope their vision is motion-based. Even when I've managed to break myself free of that, my fists just flail around. Fortunately, I've only ever had to try fighting a few times. I've seen too many stories of people being shot in the back to bother with that BS. This, if you stay and fight. Best case scenario, you all live, and spend time, and money, in court while you're recovering from your injuries, which also cost money to treat. Take it from a guy who used to carry a weapon every day. If you don't have to fight, don't. If you're going to follow these tips about eye gouging and what so have you, it better be worth you getting injured. And you better be demonstrably in the right if you mess someone up and the police show up. Chances are, if you're asking for tips via Reddit, you're not winning that thing. I'd also like to chime in about these break the rules comments. If you've never been in a fight, you're not ready to defend yourself against someone who is going to focus on throat punches, ball grabs, eye gouging, etc. Breaking the rules as an amateur is a one-way ticket to fuck up my life forever town. Even if you absolutely have to fight, you never want to give your opponent the incentive to do those things to you. The comments here remind me of that "fear the anger of a gentleman" quote. No, fear the anger of an angry man. He's been in way more fights. He knows how this shit goes down. You walk in with no fighting experience, you better have 100 pounds on the guy, or else all the gentleness in the world won't save you. As I always say, nobody wins a fight. One person just loses harder than the other. They are best to avoid at all costs. And I 100% agree with your all-in comment. It entirely depends on the context, and you have to be able to read the situation and adjust a scrap outside the bar over an argument that blew out of proportion because people were drinking. You don't go straight for the eye gouges and ball grabs. Usually it's just going to be exchanging a few punches until both parties wise up and realize that the argument isn't worth the fight. That isn't to say it's safe and you won't get fucked up. But definitely grabbing someone by the balls in a fight like that is a good way to have other people jump in and kick the absolute shit out of you. If you're being mugged or you feel your life is in danger, then absolutely do everything you can. But it's best to avoid fighting at all costs. I almost lost a good friend of mine who was knocked out outside a bar and hit his head on the sidewalk. Spent 3 weeks in a coma. Had to have the sides of his skull removed for the swelling. And he almost didn't make it. Be safe out there and don't be stupid. Yes, you're not a pussy if you back down or walk away. I personally find it trashy when a person tries their damnedest to escalate things or egg another person on, usually over nothing. Like, what do you have to prove? When shit is about to break loose, start undressing and get naked. It is important to demonstrate the opponent that you are utterly insane and will use that during a potential murder trial. I actually saw this happen at a music festival. One guy was having a bad trip and freaking out, and starting to get belligerent. When the security team arrived to calm him down, he stripped of all his clothes, presumably under the assumption that everyone would be hesitant to grab a naked man. The head of the security team, a seasoned festival vet himself, declared, "You can't out-crazy me, son," stripped off his own clothes and moved in to subdue the now thoroughly confused man. And that's how I came to watch an impromptu mud wrestling match between two large, sweaty, naked men. God, I miss festivals. I see that while others were studying the self-defense, you were studying Florida man. Skeptical smiley face. TBH, I did this one time and it worked really well. Nobody wants to fight a naked dude. Except the cops. They'll tase TF out of you and then you'll go to jail. Please don't do this to try to get out of an arrest. Keep your chin down. Give them the old dick twist. The old dick twist. That's not fighting. That's foreplay. I took a self-defense class offered at my high school and this was a real thing taught to the females. More specifically, grabbing the testicles and pulling it, twisting. It was one of the few self-defense moves we weren't allowed to practice though. Hole up and do the hokey pokey. Give them Nana's patented strawberry basket! Exclamation mark. What if they don't have a dick? Grab his dick and twist it. Give him the dick twist, yeah? Direct quote from a friend of mine. Footwork is important. Stand so that a punch won't knock you over. Don't lean into a punch. Also know what advantage you have over your opponent. If he's bigger than you, try to move to the side or behind him. Moving's harder for him, so make him move. If he's taller, get in close so his reach advantage is taken away. If he's lactose intolerant, throw milk at him. This is the best advice for actual fights on this thread. Poison damage. I like your thinking. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Mike Tyson. Edit. Please see below comments responses for some good counter advice concerning numbers 1 and 2. I still stand by them, but that doesn't mean I'm right. Additional advice that is much more important than anything above. Don't get into a fight unless you absolutely have to. Always attempt to de-escalate any hostile situation first. People who act alpha during confrontation spend most of their lives on the floor, because they spend more time than anyone getting dropped. You're better than that. Also, invest in weekly self-defense classes no matter your age. You don't need to spend years practicing. If your primary motivation is self-defense, it will only take a few months to get into shape and learn everything you'll ever need. I agree with grappling and palm strikes, but I feel getting a leg kick to do anything requires too much technique for someone who has never fought. And even if your leg kicks are awesome for a non-professional, it still takes many to end a fight. I like your advice about grappling. My son is 18 and, to my knowledge, has never been in a fight, but he wrestled for 4 years in school. I told him if he ever gets in a fight, forget that punching bullshit and get the guy to the ground. From there, you'll have an advantage over most people.